welcome back. Welcome to a video on my new car. This is a 2017 BMW M2, an OG M2 as they say, because this is not the competition. For anyone who's watched my channel, this is a replacement for my E46 M3. I sold that a few weeks ago, and I promptly bought this car. Actually, the exact same day that I sold the E46 M3, I talked to a dealership down in Florida, and they worked with me on price, and I was able to get such a good price. I actually put a deposit on this car the exact same day that I sold the M3. Let me jump into the story of how I picked this thing up, and then I will talk about the price and explain why I think this was the cheapest M2 in the country. Let me take you on a little road trip down to Florida with me. Alright, so I found a cheap flight on Southwest, flew from where I live in Nashville down to Tampa, Florida. Took an Uber over to a cheap hotel, stayed at the cheap hotel overnight, wasn't very nice. The next morning, I started on the 10.5-hour drive home. It was roughly 730 miles total. You can see here, this is the start of my journey in the M2. This is when I was still a little bit shaky and trying to make sure that everything on the car was good, but at this point, I'm driving over the bridge from St. Petersburg area to downtown Tampa. Just a note, I did all the math before I went to buy this car, and overall with the combo of the flight, hotel, gas, the price of the M2 was still well worth going down to Florida, so I had no problems making the trip. I hit a bunch of traffic in Tampa, which was no fun, but kept on trucking and soon found myself in northern Florida, and then eventually found myself crossing over the border from Florida into good old Georgia. Traveled in Georgia for a while until I got to Atlanta. It wouldn't be a trip through Atlanta unless you hit traffic, so of course hit more traffic as I was traveling through, but eventually got out of Atlanta and then made a much needed stop at Buc-ee's. For everyone who hasn't been to a Buc-ee's, you need to go. They have great barbecue. When I was there was actually a bunch of tuner cars there. It looked like actually a car meet. Ended up finding out later that there was a huge car show in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So there was a bunch of tuner cars driving through the mountain roads of Tennessee, basically all the way back home to Nashville. At one point, I got caught in a pack of stanced out 370Zs and BRZs that wouldn't let me by and continued to flash their headlights at one another. I don't know what the deal with this was. I feel like most car people are cool, but these guys were literally holding up traffic for miles, driving about 65 in their stanced out cars. Please don't take this the wrong way, but Nissan VQs that are straight piped are pretty much the worst thing in the world. Like, if there is a God, I have no idea why he created the Nissan VQ. That's all I'll say. So after getting through the stanced out gang, I continued on my way through the mountains of Tennessee, and eventually found myself getting back home to Nashville after a solid 10.5, 11-hour drive. M2 did great. Couldn't have been happier with how it did on the drive home. So, to talk about price, because I know the title of this video is a little bit clickbaity, but at the same time, it is actually true. I do truly believe that this was the cheapest clean title M2 in the country at the time. I initially reached out to this dealership in Tampa, Florida. It's actually a Chrysler dealership. Yes, I know, buying a BMW from a Chrysler dealership, horrible idea, but I know what I'm doing, kind of. And I talked to these guys. I initially proposed a trade on my Audi Daily Driver. They didn't want to give me really anything for the trade, so kind of stopped talking to them. The same day that I sold my E46 M3, they called me back. They're like, hey, what can we do to get you in this M2? And I was like, just give me a good price on it. So we worked back and forth, and I was able to lock down a price. So this is before tax, dealer fees, all that jazz, of $29,800 and some change. You know, roughly a little bit under $30,000, which to me was great. After they added in dealer fees and taxes and all that jazz, it worked out to roughly $32,000 and some change for this car. So that's all in, $32,000 and some change. If you look around at any of the car websites right now, The cheapest generally you can find these things is like 35, and that's usually with higher mileage. The cheapest one with similar mileage that I could find was roughly 36,000. It was like 35 and some change, which got you to about 36,000. And mind you, that's before tax and stuff. So figure after taxes and dealer fees and all that jazz, you're probably somewhere around 38,000 for one of these. So I got a good deal. Now, I was extremely worried going to pick this thing up that there was a whole bunch of issues. I put a deposit on it. It was a little bit risky doing it sight unseen. I had them take a bunch of extra pictures, take a video for me, stuff like that. There was a few things I knew about up front. I could tell from the pictures that there were some scratches on the back bumper. I was able to polish a little bit of it out, but I don't really care for big savings. A few scratches on the back bumper, not a big deal. I initially thought that the screen on the inside was broken because the pictures had a huge kind of line through the screen. Turns out, not broken, got there, everything was fine. So that was more or less just me being paranoid, I guess. So I thought that I would need to replace the screen. Didn't have to replace the iDrive screen, so that was great. The only other thing that I knew that was an issue is on the Carfax, this car did show that it was in a fender bender. So I knew that the front bumper probably was repainted at some point. It said like, if you know Carfax reports, it said like light accident or whatever that is. It's still a clean title. It wasn't anything major from what I could tell. But there was definitely some work done on the front end. I knew that going in. And when I went to pick up the car, that was probably the main reason I could see that this price was discounted. It's because the front bumper is just not in good shape. My assumption is the bumper was probably replaced whenever the fender bender happened, and the person didn't do any type of coating and whatever else, and this was clearly a daily driver, so there is just a fair amount. I have no idea if the camera is going to pick this up. But what's a good example? You can see in here, there's just a fair amount of rock chips and stuff on the front end. So all that being said, when I got down there, really the major thing that I could see wrong with this was the front end. I knew it would end up needing at least a big paint correction, if not actually a full respray on the front bumper. So when I got down there, I was honestly pleasantly surprised that the rest of the car was in pretty good shape. The car in general just needs paint correction, and the front bumper may need a respray. It may come down to that, but I'm completely cool with that. Even with the respray factored in and you know, some paint correction, I think I got a steal of a deal. Thing is bone stock outside of little stuff like someone tinted the windows, and they also did a charge pipe. I will pop the hood here. So yeah, bone stock. I don't know if you can see down in there, but there is an FTP charge pipe. I'm assuming someone did it because the plastic charge pipes on these things tend to crack. So I'm assuming that was more of a maintenance play than it was a performance play. Outside of that, mechanically, thing is bone stock. Interior-wise, overall in pretty good shape. You know, clearly it was someone's daily driver, so it's not perfect. The only thing that really is wrong interior wise is the sport button started peeling. A lot of these buttons in BMWs start peeling, especially the high use, high contact buttons. Clearly it happened to the starter button. Someone put the red starter button in. So I had actually already purchased this module, one of them off eBay, in perfect shape for 40 bucks. So I'll take it. Really the only noticeable thing wrong with the interior, and I was able to fix it for $40. I just have to pop the new one in there. That is pretty much the story on the car. I'm a car guy through and through. I don't mind traveling for my cars, especially if it means me saving money. And I think I did decent on this thing. You guys can tell me what you think. If I'm full of shit and, you know, $32,000 after taxes, fees, all that jazz is a bad price, but I am overall pretty happy with the purchase. Car drives great, handles really well. It's got Pilot Sport 4S's on it that look to be fairly new. So yeah, if you guys want to see more on the M2, I have a lot of mods planned and fun activities for this thing. I've already purchased a few. I have intentionally controlled myself from purchasing more until I sell some of my E46 parts. But yeah, cheapest M2 in the country is now in my possession, and I'm super happy. Stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching, guys.